Welcome to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. I'm your host, renowned sex and relationship coach, Amanda Testa. And if you are looking to reclaim your sexual desire, take sex from a to-do to something you look forward to, and enjoy deeply connected relationships without adding more to your already full plate, then you are in the right place. Listen in to discover how to fan the flames of your feminine fire, fall in love with your sensual self again, and experience intimacy like never before, all in a way that feels really good to your system. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy the episode. Are you ready to unlock the transformative power hidden within one of life's most understood transitions? If you are approaching or experiencing menopause and feeling confused, overwhelmed, or maybe even a bit scared, then this episode is your beacon of hope and empowerment. Prepare to have your perspective completely revolutionized as we explore menopause not as a crisis, but as a sacred rite of passage into leadership, power, and profound transformation. I am Amanda Testa, host of the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast, and I am so absolutely thrilled today to introduce you to two visionary pioneers in the field of menstruality, Alexandra and Sjanie Hugo Wurlitzer. I am so excited y'all are here. They are the founders of Red School and have 45 years of combined experience between them. They have written amazing books, Wise Power, and then their newest book, Wild Power. Their newest book, Wise Power, Discovering the Liberating Power of Menopause to Awaken Authority, Purpose, and Belonging. So tune in, get ready to redefine menopause, embrace your rhythms, and catalyze a deep transformation that will ripple through every aspect of your life. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Amanda.
So much, Amanda. It's lovely hearing all that.
Yes, of course. And I want you to share a little bit more about your mission, but I want to share a little bit about the beautiful timing and how I think the synchronicities, and you talk about this too, just being open to synchronicities. And I found myself last year, I'm definitely in the hinterland phase, but I was in just that feeling of, there was a betrayal feeling happening. And one of my friends was on a podcast with Elaine Kalila, and I was listening to her episode, and y'all's came up next. And I was like, oh my gosh, they have a new book. I am so excited because I was really touched by Wild Power, which is all around really harnessing the power of your cycles. And I have been tracking my cycles for 30 years and was blown away when I started having these irregular things coming in and was feeling really betrayed. And I'm wondering, would you be okay if I read a little excerpt of your book?
Oh, totally. Go ahead.
So I heard that podcast. I immediately ran out and bought the book. You can tell it's very well loved. And I was just like, this passage just hit me to the core. It begins with endings. For a while, you're dying. Your everyday socialized self bites the dust, dragging some of the architecture of your life with it. You may find that you want to abandon everyone and everything for a while, including your nearest and dearest. You may feel that nothing is it, have a desire to destroy, get rid of, or walk away from some or all of it. As death seeps in, you'll need to retreat like a caterpillar going into its cocoon. You'll enter a darkness that will scramble all of your usual ways of coping and managing life. It's as if, like the caterpillar inside its cocoon, you've turned to mush. You may feel lost or abandoned or simply want to step off the world for a while. You might wonder, is life really over? Or what was it all about? So you're dying and everything may feel like shit. This is normal. Weirdly, it's the effect of more light, the new life, new knowing, expanded consciousness activating your system. So take heart. You'll have to hang out with the discomfort for a little while. Your everyday self, your ego can't cope with this light. It's new. It's too much information. Blinded by the light, if you like. Your deep, holy self knows what's happening and what's needed. And that all is just fine. A well of inner peace lies quietly present inside, waiting for you to find it or to find an ever sure line to it. So I'm like feeling chills and like even a little emotional as I read that because it just was like, I feel so seen.
I have to admit, I'm quite moved by it too. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for reading that. It's a corker of a paragraph.
It is. And I feel like this is such needed information. And I would be curious if you might share a little bit about kind of the mission behind sharing this book and the power of it.
The mission behind sharing this book, writing this book. Well, Amanda, why, feeling things strongly. This work on the menstrual cycle is my calling, and Sjani's calling too. It has been moving me really almost from my very first bleed. I had a wonderful experience at my first bleed, quite innocently. I was very much inside something when I arrived at menopause. And the menopause process, I felt ready for menstrual cycle awareness. It teaches you to listen to yourself. I had been listening to myself over the years and unfolding something. And I was taking very good care of myself because I'd had lots of big health challenges, actually. Everything we write in the book about menopause came from my deep embodied journey into it, and also working with many women and alchemizing all those stories I lived into, all that's written about. It wasn't traumatizing. The message around menopause today is so shocking. It's so great that menopause is in the limelight. I am not diminishing that for 1 second. But the whole language around it, the negativity, I think of women in their menstruating years probably feeling terrified at the thought of menopause. Menopause is the final chapter in an unfolding story about who you are. And I am, through living my menstrual cycle journey, I was set up for this final chapter. And yes, I had to go into the underbelly and face myself and face all my inner demons and go, what's my life about? What have I done? All the classic stuff. But I felt readied for menopause, and I felt a certain dignity stepping into it. I can almost remember the moment, actually, of experiencing that dignity. It was just very subtle, but it just almost felt this rising in my being, my backbone straightening or something. I was actually just coming away from a conference where I had been speaking about something, and I was just stepping into my car. This was when I was living in Australia. And there was just this kind of lovely moment of feeling something important at work. So subtle. And I went into the belly of the beast, and, it's not called the change for nothing. I changed everything about my life, job, country, continent, a lot. Ticked all the boxes, and came out feeling just so much freer in who I was, just utterly knowing who I was. Because I do think menopause's mission is to deliver you home to yourself. And I felt like, I know what I'm about. And so it was that experience of this kind of something very special. I feel so passionately about menopause, about recovering this deep, mysterious, ennobling, sacred transformation we go through. And it actually breaks my heart when I hear the stories of what many are experiencing. And I'm not talking about all the sort of physical symptoms, but the psychological, the emotions that are coming up, the feelings of real despair and hopelessness. And it just broke my heart because I thought this is being treated
as a kind of crisis or a health condition.
A mental health crisis. And yes, it is actually, but it is looking like that because there is no context around menopause. There's no framework. There's no naming of it as a sacred rite of passage. There's no valuing or dignifying of it. And that makes me so angry.
I think we both felt very strongly that there's a new story that needs to be named and told about menopause. because the current story is that menopause is the end. It's when it's all over. It's a major crisis that you have to cope with and deal with. And in a way, that's kind of, life over. And I love that you chose that paragraph to read, Amanda. It moved me very deeply because actually in that paragraph, you really captured the essence of what our mission is, which is to really help to illuminate that this ending, because it is an ending, it's the end of your menstruating years, it's the end of a life phase, but that this ending is in fact filled with light. In other words, it is an awakening that's wanting to happen. And the disturbance that one goes through, that feeling of it's all over, is actually us needing to stabilize in this kind of new beginning, this new consciousness, this bigger game that we enter post menopause. We enter a much bigger sphere of life. We come out of our sort of individual isolated selves to really feel ourselves as part of something bigger. And that's the context that Alexandra is speaking about that's missing. It's like death doesn't end with death. It's a death and a rebirth. And that part of the story is not being told. And then actually really what comes after that and how significant that is. So that little piece you chose to read, it was very, very powerful because it sort of holds that essence of that new story so strongly.
I think it's so important because you're right. We don't really have this awareness, some communities more than others, but just really understanding the power of it and understanding the waves that you'll go through, kind of having a map of which to follow in some sense, right? Because I too have studied this for a long time and been aware, but then when it actually starts to happen, it just threw me for a loop. I was not expecting it. And I'm getting so much better at writing the waves. But when I found your book at the perfect time, Thank You Goddess, I realized this is so beautiful, the way you define the stages. And I'm wondering if you might share a little bit more kind of about the phases. And I love the way that you talk about it. There's so many things that are just, but one of the things I really love too is starting, if you would just care a little bit to share about the phases, and I'm sure I'll have more questions along the way that I wanted to dive deeper on.
Yeah, good one. Alexandra, I think you should introduce the phases. But before you do, I just want to comment on something you mentioned there, Amanda, about how even knowing something about the menopause initiation doesn't prepare you for the experience of it. And just that is the true hallmark of initiation. It's like, no matter how much you know, how much information you have, it's the living of the experience that is so incredibly powerful. And one of the reasons we created this map, which is the 5 phases of menopause, is because it's a map of the archetypal process that you go through, and everyone has their own experience of it. Everyone will have their own unique version of this archetypal experience. But we really need this map, this context, because when you are living the experience of initiation, it's so helpful to be able to go, even though this feels this way, this is exactly what's meant to be happening. I'm right on track. And that's what I think is so helpful about this map, and why so many people just love knowing about these 5 phases, is because it brings, Alexandra used this word earlier, it brings dignity to an experience which is very confronting, very difficult at times, and very unrecognized. So when you're having these moments, you can kind of go, oh, right, I'm in betrayal. This is what's supposed to be happening. It's all good, even as it's hard. And suddenly there's a new ground that we find under our feet when we have that. And that's the new story that we're really wanting people to have when they enter this rite of passage. So, yeah, Alexandra, do you want to name the phases? And
Yes. Yes, it feels quite ceremonial almost to describe this rite of passage that you're going to undergo at menopause. And I should say, as a little aside, that this all happens whilst you're still trying to conduct normal life. I mean, how bonkers is that? Oh, hang on a moment, I'm just dying over here. Yeah. Excuse me, I'm just having a little fight with my demons as you're trying to. My demons got me at the moment.
And we should also say this happens over a number of years.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a sustained and ongoing transition. So that's also important to say, menopause clinically is just the day that you haven't bled for 1 year. But actually, when we're talking about menopause, we're talking about the psycho-spiritual transition that happens over, 2 to 5 years. So you're living normal life. And this is like a deep process you're in over a sustained amount of time. So, yes, very important to acknowledge that.
Yes, that's actually really crucial. And yes, once you know this, the kind of architecture, if you like, of this initiation, it makes it so much easier, actually. It's almost like you then have the instructions for what you need to do at any point. And there's power at work. It's, we're speaking about it in quite a sort of, strong way at the moment. I just really want to emphasize that there's something really powerful going on that's thrilling too. All right. So those 5 phases. Well, we've used this word betrayal. And this is the term that we use for the first and probably definitely the strongest, most, potentially shocking moment of menopause, because it is the sort of, it's death. And, we are, and I'm talking about the dying of a way of life that you've had or an identity that you've held. And your body, of course, is going through an ending. Your physical body is going through the ending of your menstrual cycle years. So there's this great hormonal shift going on inside. So it's a very intense moment, this first phase, because you're being undone, basically. And this is not comfortable. Well, it's not comfortable for our egos, basically. So I like to say it's the death of our ego. And our egos, man, they do not want to give in, they're clinging on for dear life, scrabbling to hold the high ground, even as you're slipping off the edge of the cliff down into the depths. And your ego is kind of going, ah! Now, and what happens when we start to divest, to feel our identity slipping away, is we become much more permeable, much more exposed. So it's this combination of being undone, but becoming much more permeable to ourselves, to the world. We feel things more deeply. We are seeing into ourselves more deeply. I won't go into too much detail. I mean, we may say a bit more with your further questions, but I kind of want to just give the overview. So yes, this is great undoing and exposure. It's like we're really exposed to ourselves. And we're exposed to the shadow side of ourselves, really. And that's what makes it quite tough. And then powerful feelings coming up in reaction to that. Actually, even within the betrayal phase, there can be these moments of kind of liberation, almost like, possibility, but it's so unstable. This time is really unstable. And that you really need to just slow everything down. And the more you know about this and the more you can tend to it, the more you're going to find yourself coming into what we call the second phase, which is also a very big chunk of menopause. These first 2 phases where you really do the heavy lifting. And in the repair phase, I think of it like being becalmed on an ocean. There's no wind pushing your sails forward. There's no wind pushing you back. You are just there in this great unknown, ocean of unknown. And you've sort of come to terms with the fact that you're in menopause now. So you're not fighting things as one does at the beginning and says, no, it's not happening to me. And you try to keep your head above water. No, I'm staying up here. No, finally you have surrendered and you are in quite a surrendered place. And you just, all you want is just to be still and quiet in time and space. Mainly, it's no responsibility. And this is what menopause most wants for you, because menopause is actually its mission is to bring you home to yourself. And to do that, you've got to, first of all, divest yourself of the old self and to just have time to be nothingness. You just need no pressures. You just need life to go on in a very simple way. Yes, you can go to work, you can do but you just do it in a kind of low key, just low maintenance, doing the absolute basics. And what you're doing now is you are repairing. That's why we use that word. You're really finding out about the condition of your physical body, how you're doing physically. You will be exposed to what your actual stress levels are like, how your nervous system actually is, what your energy levels actually are. And you'll probably find your nervous system is a lot strung out, just because that's the nature of 21st century living. It's too stressful. And you may find that the tank is completely empty of energy and you just don't want to move. And what you're doing here is healing your physical body, but also your emotional, your psychological being. Because in this exposure to yourself, what will happen is that there'll be unresolved griefs, sadnesses, traumas that emerge. So you're confronting things about yourself, and repair is an invitation to heal. And this takes as long as it takes, Amanda. It just takes as long, and you can't push the river. You can't go, okay, that's enough rest. Come on, body, crank into action. You can't work like that anymore. Your body will absolutely rebel. You could do it in your 40s. You could push yourself. No pushing. And then here's the magic. This is what I so love. And I love to use the analogy of winter. And we talk about menopause or wintering phase. You go into a kind of inner winter. And I love that analogy because we think about winter where all the leaves fall from the trees and everything goes quiet. The earth is all quiet. And then out of nowhere, spring starts springing. In that fallow time of winter, the soil, you can't see anything, but the soil is doing all this amazing reparation work so that spring is possible again. I mean, nature tells us everything, Amanda.
Hey, it's Amanda. If you are enjoying the show and felt a connection to what we've discussed, and you're ready to take the next step in reigniting your passion and enhancing your relationships, I have something special for you. Visit www.amandatesta.com/thegoods, where you can subscribe to my email. And if you want, you can sign up for a free personalized sensuality discovery session with me. In this one-on-one heart-to-heart session, we'll explore your unique desires, uncover any challenges, and set a path for you to experience the vibrant, fulfilling love life you deserve. Don't let another day pass feeling unfulfilled or disconnection. Take action now, and let's start this beautiful journey together to fire up your feminine fire. Join me at amandatesta.com/thegoods. I'm excited to stay connected. Now back to the show.
And so our third phase we call revelation. It's the waking up of something, where before in betrayal and repair, we thought, oh, what's it all about? I don't know. I have no idea who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going. Suddenly, bingo, you go, oh, yeah. Something wakes up in you and starts to get stronger and bigger. So revelation is very much actually, revelation is mostly about you going, oh, I am okay. It's the awakening to yourself. I think this is the moment where I talk about delivering you home to yourself. You're in the inner sanctum now of your kind of inner temple of menopause, if you like. It's delivered you to this kind of holy of holies, which is you discovering who you are. And I remember that moment so clearly. And I just thought, oh, wow, this is who I am. Oh, wow. Yeah. Why? And it wasn't original, by the way. I knew that these were things about my nature and so on. But suddenly I thought, yeah, what am I doing? This is how I'm meant to be in the world, etc. It's so funny, makes me laugh. And with that revelation of yourself, we talk about being inoculated by love in this third phase. Just this acceptance of who you are, your humanity, your warts and all, because there's always bits of you go, oh, how embarrassing I did this, But then there's just forgiveness of yourself and just, you know what? I'm okay, just as I am. This is cool. This is good. It's such a good feeling. It's so important. This is the most precious moment for me about menopause, to taste that. However modestly, to just start to feel the kind of inner sweetness with yourself. And then the fourth phase is that experience in revelation expands into this fourth phase of visioning, where it's just, now you know what you're about, who you are, where you want to put your energy, what you want to do in the world. And we talk about here, this is where your calling really, speaks loudly and clearly. And maybe you already knew what really floated your boat before you came into menopause. I did. I knew what I was about. But in menopause, it's like lit up in technicolor. Once you've really started to feel who you are, then it's like the calling has such a good channel to come through now. There's something unequivocal in your nature. So there are no blocked pipes, or the pipes are a whole lot less blocked, shall we say. And something comes through. So that fourth phase is visioning. And so that third and fourth phase, are you sort of, in a sense, on the upward curve coming out of menopause? The first two phases down into the depths. Now you're starting the work of coming out. And it's that coming out phase, those second, third, fourth, and fifth phases. The final phase is emergence. Those final three are just you sort of, feeling more and more, letting this new life grow and show itself more and more. And your energy will be returning, but it's not super stable yet. That's why it takes time to stabilize. And then one day you will feel like, you know what? I think it's done. You are quite newly hatched when you come out of menopause, and you have to be thoughtful about yourself. You can't push in the same way. But there's a sense of being sort of more back in the world again. So when you're in menopause, you will feel that the world is behind a glass. You are behind glass, looking at the world through this sheet of glass. You're sort of separated. I often think of it's like being underwater and looking at the world sort of going on the surface, but you're just below the water. This quality of separation from the world. And even as you're in the world going about your business, it's like you're in this little bubble, this little private bubble. So you look entirely normal, as I like to say, on the outside. And you're delivering on what you have to in an utterly minimal way. You're not pushing, you're not going the extra mile for anybody now. And then gradually that sort of bubble around you starts to thin, and you feel like, oh yeah, I'm here again now, and it's a new world, and I'm newly minted, and off you go.
That arc is so beautifully expressed. And I even just as you were sharing, felt the emotionality of it. And I think for those that are in the throes of the waves, it's really remembering that as part of the process. And have people have kids later, like for example, me, and you could be managing a lot of different caregiving roles on all aspects with the little ones or parents or caregivers. And it's interesting because my daughter's moving she's 12 and I'm 51. So we're like, whoo. But I love how you said this phrase. And I would want if you would share a little bit more about this technique, because I think this is so beautiful. Oh, the smudging or tell me the word again.
I know, snudging.
Snudging. Yes, the snudging. I love that so much. Tell me more about this concept, because I'm like, yes.
So good. This was a word that I discovered accidentally. There's an astrologer called Rob Bresney, who I love reading because he uses language in such a fantastic way. And he spoke about this word snudging, which is like an old word, which basically means, you look like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but actually you're just doing whatever you need to do to get away with it. It's like bare minimum, the lowest standards you can possibly have, and kind of, and appearances look good. So when I came across this word, Alexandra, and I loved it, thinking about menopause, because when Alexandra's just described this incredibly powerful process that you go on, which is really divesting yourself of all the conditioning and all the armoring of your life thus far. So there's this profound experience of de-armoring oneself and going into such an exposed, vulnerable place and doing this inner work and repair so that you can come back to your essence and really let that flower in the world in a much more liberated, unrestricted, shameless way. But to do that, really, we can't keep going at the pace we've been going in normal life. You can't do this kind of inner work and still be all things to all people and performing at your absolute best, because most of us are perfectionists. Most of us give everything. It's sort of, I'd say, very conditioned into women to like do our absolute best and be very generous. And this word snudging is the ultimate prescription for menopause, because it's like, no more of that now. Now you're not going the extra mile. Now you aren't giving your absolute best. Now it's about lowering your standards and just doing what you need to do to keep the stuff of life ticking by. And so snudging is your friend. We say, if you aren't snudging during menopause, you're going to be taking a lot of strain.
It's so true. And I think you can do it. And I love that too, because it's finding those little pockets of rest and peace where you can. And really, you're still taking care of things. You're getting things done, but you're giving yourself permission to really care for yourself and slow down.
Exactly.
The best as you can, right? Because not everyone has the ability. So, but I love that phrase, and I'm
it's a goodie. Yeah, it's just really permission to cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
And do the bare minimum, which I think we all really need that permission.
Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned this a few times too, is there's that time where you really kind of are mending your past wounds and repairing. And can you share, you touched on this, but I would be curious if you could go a little deeper into why now it's so important to do, like why at this time you have to kind of take that initiative to reflect and repair, heal the things you need to heal.
Yeah. Well, it's everything really. And when I say heal, sometimes we carry very big challenges within us. And, from our childhood or whatever. And of course, we can't change that, but we have to find some way of making peace with it. The word forgiveness is very important. Forgiving where we can, because it's about freeing ourselves. And where perhaps something does feel unforgivable for you, and by the way, this is between you, yourself, and nobody else, but it's about, the best way I can put it is making peace with things as best you can, so that it's like releasing baggage. You don't want to take this baggage into your post-menopause life, because it is baggage. It's wearisome. It saps your power. It saps your energy. And, let me just really hold this for a moment, because this is such a centerpiece for me, this work of repair, of making peace with. It is, what's really crucial is what you're doing is you're stepping out of a victim consciousness to find your own authority, to find your sovereignty. You have to drop the victim consciousness. And that is, that takes time. And it is in a way what menopause is really asking of us. It's about, frankly, if I put it very bluntly, it's about growing up and taking responsibility for who we are and how things have played out. Because we will have regrets about our life too. And we have to make peace with that. Things that we wanted haven't happened. We might have wanted children and that didn't happen, and so on. And we cannot remain at the mercy of the grief of that or the rage, because the person it's most damaging is us. Sjanie, do you want to say something here? I feel.
Well, just as you're speaking, it's really shining a light on one of the things that's so beautiful about menopause, which is that the process that's happening to us is creating all the conditions that really support healing, that really make healing possible. For example, when Alexandra spoke about this first phase of betrayal, this death moment, what's happening there is what has been unconscious gets illuminated, comes into our awareness. And this is the gateway to healing. If we aren't aware of what we are holding, what's undigested and what's unintegrated in us, we can't really begin the process of healing. So menopause illuminates things for us. And that is quite shocking sometimes, to kind of really see our shadow, really see our wounding, our limiting beliefs, our own self-shaming, and the kinds of strictures we've held ourselves in. It can be very painful to recognize that, but that awareness is the doorway into healing. And because of how menopause pulls you into yourself and kind of encourages you to step out of the do consciousness, again, this is just such a gift for healing, because healing happens when we surrender. With that awareness, if we're able to really connect with those parts of ourselves that we've abandoned or disowned, or the places where we're holding on to resentment and bitterness, or whatever's stuck in our psyche, whatever hasn't been able to really fulfill itself, when we rest and surrender in that place, healing can happen. I think this is what I find so beautiful, that menopause does heal you if you are honoring this process of dying and going inward and letting go. And so the conditions are really ripe for it. There is this light that's wanting to come through you. There is this essence of you that is wanting to really shine. And that's, in a way, I like this image of imagining kind of crusty soil. If you think of all your conditioning and armoring and victimhood and trauma, this crusty soil, there is this new, this essence of you, this incredible, powerful, creative force in you that's busting against this crusty earth. And that's what causes all the disruption. But ultimately, this disruption is in order so that you can be liberated, that your real self, your whole self, your creative contribution can be freed. So to not let yourself have that feels like such a missed opportunity, because it's really one of the gifts of menopause. Yeah.
Yes, I feel that deeply. And I think you speak to that blooming, and also this is like that initiation into you and also leadership. And I would love if you would share, because I think this is timely too, just on that power of how this transition can correlate to our potential for leadership and what unique qualities menopausal and postmenopausal women bring to leadership roles.
My goodness. Yes. Well, to just set the context here, we spoke about menopause as an awakening. And of course, you're awakening to who you truly are. But here's the interesting thing. In the act of awakening to who you truly are, you awaken to something much, much bigger than you that's not about you. So you're sort of getting over yourself, your ego takes a dive and you find this real essence of yourself. And I mean, it really, you go right into the heart of you and claim yourself. And in that moment, you are awoken to this bigger service. So it's not about you anymore. It's about what you've come here to serve in the world. And we talk about it as your calling. And we're referring to that as leadership, that we all have something. We all have a role to play in caring for the world. Now, and whatever it is that calls to us that we must do, and often it can be quite scary. It's like, oh, no, if you go bother someone else, I'm not interested. But this sense of knowing, this is what you've got to do can be very, very strong. But I also want to emphasize you making peace with yourself means that you are a much kinder, more peaceful person. And that is a contribution to serving the world. So some of us may be out on the front line doing real sort of frontline leadership work. I mean, this is my leadership work, this teaching on menstruality, and it's really about serving the feminine in the world. But others' lives may be much more private and much more subtle, or maybe you're just more available for something bigger than you. And it can be done just through who you are and the kindness that you feed into the world just by being who you are. So I just really want to emphasize that, because some people may be thinking, oh, no. There's no way I want to go be a leader. That word leadership for us means you really feeling who you are and sharing that in the world. In service of life, in service of goodness, in service of wholeness, in service of harmony. In service of love. It's the work of love ultimately. And within that great sort of statement, there may be very specific jobs that you're called to do, literally, like I have, So what does a post-menopause woman bring to leadership life in all its guises? Well, perhaps one of the best things is we do not feel beholden to others in the same way. We are, in a sense, I want to say, a law unto ourselves. That is slightly dangerous, It's like we answer to no one. Except for me, I answer to no one, but ultimately I answer to, the divine. That's the only authority ultimately. I mean, I'm still very human. And even as I may not care what others think in the same way, really, I think excuse my language, really, the bigger fish to fry here. I'm going to get over myself, and that's what I have to do. I am, of course, still very human, and I feel things very deeply. But it's not about me. It's not about me. And I just can get over myself, because it's about something much bigger than me that I want to serve. So it's a deep feeling of meaning you have. It's leadership that's really infused with meaning. And it's your calling that calls you into leadership. It's not the job itself. It's that you feel you must go do something, share something, Yeah. So I bring this, yes, we don't care what others think in the same way. We're much more a free agent.
And if I were to sort of add to that, which sounds like a contradiction, but I think it's really important to name, is that the process of de-armoring, and also Alexandra tells me the process of aging, really makes you more vulnerable. And actually, to popular belief, this is an incredible leadership power. In fact, it's where I think most leadership in the world goes wrong, is that people are not in touch with their vulnerability or even aware of their vulnerability. But a post-menopause woman feels that vulnerability, and because of it, feels things, feels the world, feels herself. And that means it's like a heart-led leadership. It's the leadership that's really rooted in deep care and in deep love. And I see that in you, Alexandra, just a very undefended way of showing up in the world, where like being visible and being public doesn't mean having to put on some kind of facade. It means you being wholly you in that very undefended way and allowing for all the vulnerability of that. And that's that's a very special kind of leadership. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sjanie, for that. Yeah. I would like to, that's very lovely. And yes, it is. I feel more and more undefended. And that requires a lot of inner work, actually, which is where this is actually important. What it took for me to go through menopause, to really harvest what menopause was trying to give me, to receive it. The muscles I have developed, the psychological muscles, are the same muscles I use now to sustain me in this role as a leader, because being a leader really demands something. When you're showing up in the world, there's quite a lot of challenge that goes on. But I do feel that I'm very, 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 very grateful for the experience of menopause, for really building this consciousness within me and the muscle with which to sustain or be with or manage or be able to hang out in that consciousness. And one of the things that I would love to add here is that actually it's growing more and more in me as I get older, which is a sense of the quality of my presence is contributing to the world. And I would love all menopause women to hear that. So yes, you may be doing all sorts of great things, but it is our witnessing of people. It is this capacity to hold the big picture and to feel even in the madness and the chaos, because there's some pretty awful stuff going on in the world. It's like, I always like to say that the postmenopausal woman or person has one foot in the sort of divine and one foot in the human world. And you're sort of holding that bridge, because if I was wholly in the human world, I'd be going to hell in a handbasket. In terms of how I would see the world, it would just be not good. But having this foot in the divine, it's almost like it's like you're holding a bigger picture for everybody, that there is meaning at work, that there is goodness, and that goodness is at work. And it's hard for people to hold that when their lives feel shit. But I feel a postmenopausal woman, that's their sacred task, is to keep holding that bigger picture, to hold the goodness, to hold the knowing that it's like steering the ship through the rough waters. That's
Yeah. What a gift. I so appreciate both of you. Thank you so much. And for those listening who want to dive deeper into working with you, could you share a little bit more about Red School and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So Red School is both a place you can come to learn about menstruality and all the different life stages of menstruality. and the spiritual practice of menstrual cycle awareness, as well as this menopause rite of initiation. And it's also a community, with a very, very lively community where you can come and be with like-minded, cycle-aware folk. So you can find out all about that and join our community, which is free, at redschool.net. And actually, if you go redschool.net/start here, you'll get a direct link to join our community. So that's a good way to find out about us. And also on Instagram at red.school. We post there from time to time. And we have a podcast called the Menstruality Podcast, where we have some cracking conversations about all the different aspects of menstruality, both with Alexandra and I, but also with other guests. So there's a lot of richness there.
I just want to say that we also have our lovely menopause course coming up in November as well. So if people are interested in diving into that.
We take people through a journey through the 5 phases of the menopause process over 6 weeks. So you can find about that at redschool.net/menopause. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I just appreciate you both so much. I know our time is sadly coming to a close, but is there any maybe last words you'd like to share before we close?
I want to say to everyone, trust menopause. Trust what your inner life is saying to you. And you're not going mad. Because that's what people say, I feel like I'm just going mad. And I go, no. You're not going mad. You're waking up. And you're actually being guided from within. And you need to listen to your inner promptings. I would suggest you just make notes on your inner promptings initially, because some of your inner promptings will be, get the hell out of here and, disappear off into the sunset, which is basically a way of saying you need to stop and rest. So yes, listen to yourself, but go slowly, take time, listen in and respect what you're hearing.
Thank you both so much again. It was such a pleasure to meet you. And I will make sure to, for those listening and you want to go further, to share in the show notes. But just thank you so much again, Sjanie and Alexandra. Such an honor to meet you and to share your wisdom here. So thank you again.
Thank you. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you, Amanda.
Me too. It's been a real pleasure. Real pleasure talking with you. It's great. Thanks.
And thank you all for listening. We will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. If you loved this episode, please go ahead and forward it right now to someone you know would love it. And if you've not had a chance yet to leave us a rave review on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to rate and review if you enjoyed it, as well as make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to stay connected, make sure to go to amandatesta.com/thegoods to download your free sensuality activation and stay connected. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.